So I would firstly advise all of the dealers that are watching to simply accept that you are going to lose the ability to realistically use third-party tracking cookies. Just let it go. It is going away internet-wide. This is like we're holding on to something that is already dead.
Do data privacy laws stifle innovation, or are they a blueprint for building consumer trust? Welcome into Facts Not Feelings. I am your host, Brooke Furniss, and today we are tackling these very tough questions in the automotive industry. We're going to dive deep into the world of data privacy and compliance, debunking myths, revealing how stringent regulations impact dealership operations, and exploring how businesses can navigate the choppy waters of compliance while still using powerful tools like Google Analytics. With us today, we have insights from legal expert Boyd Stough, Tom Kline, who is the lead consultant and founder of Better Vantage Point, and Zach Billings, who has been a regular on the show lately. He is the co-founder and VP of Performance at Wikimoto. Gentlemen, welcome into the show today.
Thank you, Brooke.
Thanks, Brooke.
You are so welcome. I am really, really excited to dive in. This seems to be a little bit of a hot topic lately. And for those that might not know Boyd, I want to make so Boyd, people can know you. You are, I'll say, an independent consultant that is a legal expert. You actually are a lawyer. You're over a lot of different SaaS companies. None of us personally use you. Well, we might use you, but not in that way. And we're just so grateful to have your insights. I really wanted to bring someone on that has the legal background. While Tom plays an attorney and lawyer on TV, he's very, very smart with that. And I wanted to bring in some of the legal experts. So just want to set the ground for those who are like, hey, that's a new face. Not sure that is. So with that, Boyd, I'm going to start with you with this very first question here. What are the most common misconceptions about data privacy compliance in the automotive industry, and how can we debunk them?
Well, I would say that the biggest misconception is you don't need it. And I understand that because dealers are not alone in this. You'll be surprised, or maybe not so surprised, to know that legislation isn't always written with, let's say, the subject's best interests in mind. There's a lot of players involved in the drafting of legislation and of course, the capitalizing on legislation. A lot of these laws are actually written so that you read them as a lay person, right, or a lay legal expert, if you will, and you look at these things and you self-disqualify, right? Well, I don't need to do that because you see here it says that X, Y, and Z. We don't need to check that box. So that's number one. The reality, and this is something that I've been harping for quite a long time, and Tom has been great at echoing, which is that there's a distinction between the legal reality and the business reality. And that this is something that if it were insanely expensive, I could understand doing all manner of mental gymnastics trying to avoid it. But the reality is that there's a really good business case for having great consumer data privacy in mind and having a great solution in place. We could talk about those, obviously, at any length you like. But it's a very smart thing to do. And your characterization at the beginning, Brooke, was really brilliant. Is it a pain in the butt, or is it something you can actually leverage to create really a lot of trust with your customers? And it really certainly is the latter. That's why one of the companies I work with uses a tagline called leverage the power of permission, as opposed to comply or else burn in hell. So that would be number one. The only other thing, the big misconception is that these laws are specifically written in order to handcuff you, and they're not. There's a lot of consideration went into the drafting of these laws, such that they do facilitate the more meaningful aspects of marketing and advertising.
I think we just close up the show at this point. Like, we're done. Boyd just answered everything we need to know.
Thanks for having us. We appreciate it.
Tip your waitresses. He'll be here all night. Okay. No, there's just so much to unpack with that. I'm going to go next to Tom on this because what you just said, like I said, that was just brilliant. So thank you so much. And there's a reason why I bring on people a hell of a lot smarter than me on the show. But Tom, that goes to, some are going to argue that stringent data privacy regulation is going to 100% stifle innovation and adaptability. I can't say the word apparently today. I need something stronger in this cup. That's what it really means. So how can dealers balance the compliance with the need for operation flexibility?
Okay, well, to unpack that, so first of all, let's talk about compliance. Compliance is like a word that nobody really loves, but let me just give you a new way to think about compliance. All compliance is someone has to do a thing at some point in time. That's what compliance is. And maybe they have to do that with certain frequency. If you kind of reshift your thinking and think about it in that way at dealership, there are all kinds of things you have to do for compliance. If I understand your question correctly, as the entrepreneur and the business owner, you have to decide where the risk is and where you may or may not find the balance between what's legal, what's compliant, and what you might need to do for marketing, for example. And somewhere in there, you have to find what works for you. You might be more willing to take on more risk or less willing to take on risk, in which case there are choices that you could make, especially when we're talking about data privacy, that will comport with exactly what your risk profile is. Does that answer your question, Brooke?
Yeah, and I would say as well is that we're seeing a lot of this just because there's so much information out on this. And as we all know, the internet is great for a lot of things. Great for information. It's great for misinformation. There's a little bit of both going on here. And it's knowing that, hey, you can still you can still be compliant and have all the compliance things. And is that really going to stifle innovation? When it's done correctly, no, I don't believe that's going to. It's definitely, we're going to jump through hoops. I know, Tom, you and I have more conversation between GLBA and the CARS Act. I mean, you and I were talking over the weekend of like me putting a deck together for the CARS rule. So there's so much that's coming at dealerships right now. And being able to balance hey, this is, we can still use this and still be as proactive as we need to be. And that's one thing I know that you and I have talked about a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's no one size fits all for any compliance matter or any regulation or any business practice for that matter. That's why you have so many different entrepreneurs who handle their business different ways. So I think it's important for anyone who's owning and running a business to consider what the facts are, not the feelings.
Good tagline.
Yeah. What the facts are of the situation, what the laws are, and where there's wiggle room in the law, because there's always wiggle room 100% of the time, and then what you want to do about those two things. Those two things have to merge for you to make an intelligent decision. If you don't have the facts of what you're talking about, then you can't make an intelligent decision. If you don't know what the laws are, you can't make an intelligent decision. In this particular case of what we're talking about, and Boyd, you correct me if I'm wrong, there are 17 different states that have different laws on this issue. It's up to 17, right, Boyd?
That's correct.
Yeah. And there's no federal law, even though there's one bouncing around in Congress. And so it really gets interesting if somebody's on the border of Virginia and West Virginia and they're shopping, they're sitting in their house in Virginia and they're shopping in West Virginia. You have to be compliant with West Virginia. The dealership in West Virginia has to be compliant with West Virginia law. I don't know West Virginia law off the top of my head, but there's really a lot of nuance here. And the important part is that the dealer, whatever privacy banner or cookie consent they want to do, is jurisdictionally, that the banner is jurisdictionally responsive. So if somebody's coming from California and they're looking at your website and you're in Virginia, they're going to get served up to California, the CCPA, the information in order for them to be compliant. Now I'll pause there.
And I'm pretty sure we're going to get that more, but that is such a big issue. I won't say issue, but that is such a big part of when you're looking at compliance. And we all have been on quite a few chats at this point, and it is possible to have that to say, okay, while I'm in Chicago, man, I have multiple dealerships that do a lot of out-of-state business. Well, if that's the case, hey, if you're in California, you're getting served up. If you're in New York, you're getting served up something else. If you're in Texas, you're getting served up something else. So that's something really key as you're going through, and we do not care what company you use, just going through and saying, hey, can you do these things? And we'll get in more to that, but I'm really glad that you brought that up. Zach, I'm coming over to you now. So we're talking all about technology, right? And how this compliance is going to affect it. So dealerships face aggressive compliance demands that limit access to essential tools like Google Analytics. How can they effectively respond to these challenges?
Yeah, so let's zoom this out to the impact on marketing for dealers for a second. So compliance is something that's coming, starting in legal regulation, right? And we have different state laws. We don't have a federal law. And what it's coming down to is what areas of data are impacted by this, what impact will that have on our marketing as car dealers, or our visibility to what that marketing did? And how are we going to maximize our ability to make decisions, accurate decisions, market effectively, market in, frankly, consumer forward ways, things that are good for the consumer, while not getting ourselves in hot water, right? So two primary areas for dealers to think about where this is going to have an impact. You need something on your website, just thinking in terms of consent and permission, as Boyd said. You need something to be able to get consumer permission, particularly for the states where these regulations exist. So what are you getting permission for? You're getting permission to use third-party tracking cookies, potentially, but those are going the way of the dodo and in a hurry. So I would firstly advise all of the dealers that are watching to simply accept that you are going to lose the ability to realistically use third-party tracking cookies. Just let it go. It is going away internet-wide. This is like we're holding on to something that is already dead at this point. First of all, what impact does that have? Potentially not being able to follow people around with retargeting. I'll come back later maybe as we get into some of the specific impacts and what you can do about this and what to look out for when it comes to some other impacts that it can have. But also what we're hearing now is a lot of chatter about, well, which cookies do we block? So cookie is a very generic term. A third-party cookie could be like Meta's tracking cookie or Facebook's tracking cookie that follows a user around the web. And the most simplistic way of looking at third-party cookies is it's something that follows people around the web, multiple websites, to follow their behavior, to show them an ad on another site. And so then take that a step further, a cookie could be something that just allows you to do first-party tracking, like on your website. So Google Analytics, as you said, Brooke, is something that we're hearing buzz about. Should we be blocking Google Analytics scripts if a user opts out? And I'm not an expert on whether this is truly necessary or not. My opinion from what I've been able to see is that it is not necessary in any state that I can tell. And I'll let the experts weigh in on that in a second. But let's talk about just really quick the monetary impact of not having complete analytics data. So one of the companies that provides consent banners has a beta going to evaluate blocking Google Analytics scripts. One of my dealer groups opted into the beta, and they blocked Google Analytics for any user that did not accept. When you have the decline accept options in the banner, anyone who didn't accept blocks analytics. What percentage of their traffic can they now not see in analytics? It was across the dealer group where we could see the data. It was 64% on average went away. So they only have 36% visibility to the data that measures what people did on their website. Well, that's our conversion data. That's optimizations to Google Ads. That's being able to say, did an email campaign do what it was supposed to do? Did my SEO work? And so many of the critical decisions that we make about how to use our marketing budget are based on what we see in our analytics data down to the conversion level. So if you lose 64% of that on average, even if it was 50%, that's an enormous number and an enormous blind spot. Average rooftop marketing spend in total is, well, it can range anywhere from 20 grand to 100 plus grand per rooftop, but let's call 50 grand a safe number. A lot of dealers have a 50 grand a month marketing budget. So if not even 64%, let's say 20 grand of that becomes hard to measure and hard to fine tune as a result of all of this lost data. Everyone's nodding, so I'm thinking 20 grand out of 50 sounds fair to everybody. So first of all, that's 20 grand in marketing that you're potentially wasting right out of the gate. But it doesn't stop there. That is not the extent of the cost. If you miss that, and the average car dealer is about $500 cost per sale, $20,000 divided by 500 is 40 sales per month. That is your opportunity cost when you lose a handle on 20 grand worth of your marketing. So now you're actually losing 40 car sales a month in addition to your wasted $20,000 in marketing. Now add this up. Average front and back gross, $2,000 a copy, I think is a safe number in the industry at this point. So 40 cars times $2,000 a copy is $80,000 a month in lost profit on top of your 20 grand in wasted marketing. Now what you're looking at is $100,000 a month in waste or lost profitability ultimately, that's over $1 million a year as a result of the decision to block analytics scripts on your website. All for something that is not a well-defined need when we look at the legal basis for this. So what I'm getting at here is Tom was saying it's a business issue, not a legal issue, right? This is a risk-reward decision for business owners to be making. Dealer principals, general managers talking to your dealer principals, et cetera. So if you operate a service shop and you change and you rotate tires, you accept a risk that sooner or later a tire could come off and you could get sued. What do? You put in as reasonable as possible safeguards to prevent against that. The same is true here. What is your risk of getting sued for analytics scripts running on your website, which are anonymous to user individual data? Seems like next to nothing for $1 million a year loss.
Yeah, that's, yeah. And we lost Boyd here for a second. He's back here now. No, once again, within these first three questions, I'm like, man, we have hit on so many different things. And like I said, there's so much buzz right now going about all of this. And I know we're going to get more into whether it's Google Analytics to regulatory and for state to state, everything along those lines. And Boyd, I'm going to go back to you on this because you are the lawyer in the situation of our little Brady Bunch squares here right now. You are the actual lawyer. We all just not even close. Tom's probably the closest, to be honest. But what practical steps should dealers take to protect their first-party data or data from being overly restrictive?
So I'll always have to preface everything by saying this is not legal advice. So I'm weighing in as a subject matter expert. I'm not your lawyer, and you should definitely consult an attorney if you have any questions. That all being said, could you rephrase the question? I want to get it just spot on.
Yeah. So what practical steps should dealers take to protect their first-party data from being overly restricted?
The main thing to understand is that when these laws were drafted, okay, what held them up in all cases is you have all these parties that are weighing in, and that includes all these tech companies, right, who are making a lot of money from working with dealerships to make a lot of money, okay? There was a real balance that they attempted to achieve. So try to keep that in mind and understand that, number one. So there's a lot of people out there who are suggesting some overly draconian measures, let's put it that way. And to Tom's point, in each case, it's going to be a balancing act. In each case, it's going to come down to what is the nature of your business? What level of risk tolerance do you have? But in all cases, when it comes to the subject of consumer data privacy, you need some bare minimums, okay? So understand this. Let's capitalize on what Zach was talking about. If you're spending, say, $20,000 or $50,000 a month in advertising, you're driving a lot of people to your website. And what you may not be aware of is the fact that you're responsible for what happens to all that data, right? So what you really want is for somebody to give you their name and their email address and their phone number and all these kinds of things, right? That's the thrust of it. But you have to take responsibility for the fact that you're responsible for that data, no matter where it goes. And you may not be aware of the fact that data is going to end up in a lot of different places. You use a lot of third-party applications in order to be able to manage those relationships, to improve the experience, to be able to retarget, to be able to follow up on a good lead, et cetera. And you have to know, too, that virtually all of those third parties are themselves using third parties in order to facilitate their own applications, okay? So you're responsible for the flow of that data, the chain of custody, if you will, right? It may not be the case that data ends up getting shared or sold, but it does in many cases end up getting shared or sold. We could talk about lots of different, Google Analytics is an example of that. And we could talk how that taps into other things, pun intended. But at the very least, what you need is you need a solution that it is globally compliant, okay? Because here's the thing. If somebody subjectively believes that they have a right, they can make your life a living hell. They may not actually have a right, okay? They may be coming from a state to your dealership in a state where there is no consumer data privacy laws in place. But because they've been on the internet and they've seen all this stuff, they've personally interacted, virtually all of their interactions have some sort of cookie banner, somebody's asking for their permission, et cetera. They subjectively develop this belief that they have a right. And they write in, they file what's called a data subject access request. And they ask you to export, delete, change their data. You're like, excuse me? Okay. At the very least, what you have here is a reputation management issue, right? You want that person to be a customer. If there's any chance of maintaining a good relationship with them whatsoever, you want to certainly put them off of taking any sort of certainly legal action, right? Or getting out on social media and talking smack. So at the very least, what you need is a globally compliant solution that's jurisdictionally responsive, meaning that if they come from California, then their IP is detected, they're served up a banner with the proper language and options, right? And then what you also need behind that, this is a minimum. I mean this, you really don't have a full solution in place if you don't have the banner, which we just discussed, cookie banner, okay, is it popularly called, and data subject access request management. We talked a minute ago, or I did anyway, about how that data can flow from your website, from the front end of your website to all these other databases. You've got to be able to easily find a customer's data in any and all of those databases and take some sort of corrective action. Okay. And then when it comes to PII and first party data and things like this, you need to collect specific consent or permission for that data, right? This is a major kind of CYA move. But at the very least, those are the three things you need, okay? You need consent preference management, which is the PII stuff, the DSAR management, which allows you to look through all these databases, find that stuff quickly, and take some kind of action that keeps everybody happy. And then you, at the very least, of course, you're going to have that cookie banner. Does that kind of answer the question?
Oh, 100% it does. And I want to go back to something you said and then spring back right into something that Zach said. So first off, that I think it was just like last week, it was the last couple of weeks, where it was some of the major cell phone providers got in massive trouble because they claimed and said, oh, we're not sharing anybody's information. And they 100% were. T-Mobile was the number one culprit of that. I believe Verizon was lower in the thing.
Right.
Lower. They were still doing it. But that's the same thing as even though you may feel like it's not being shared, you're not in control of all. I mean, our cars right now, as we all know, are our third screen. Our cars send so much information about us. It's insane. So just because you feel like that doesn't mean it's actually true. And Zach, to your point about the cookies going away, I mean, it was just as like just recently that Google came out and said, I posted about this because it was like tongue in cheek that, oh, look, surprise, surprise, they're moving it back. They're moving the goalpost once again. Now, I understand there's a lot of legal recourse for that as well, of why they're doing it. I get that. There's a monopoly issue. There's all that. But I remember back in 2019, I was having very, very tough conversations with certain providers out there saying, what are you doing about cookies going away? Because I, for some reason, not naively believed that cookies were actually going to go away in 2020. They didn't, but they eventually will. It's just a matter of time. So saying all that, I want to go back to springboard a little bit more off of what Boyd was where you're talking about there. There's also all this concern about non-compliance and this fear and a lot of fear mongering going on right now. And I see this not just in compliance, but obviously a lot of other things. So how can dealers discern legitimate compliance needs from those fear mongering tactics? Boyd, I'm going to start with you on this one.
Absolutely. Again, have a competent lawyer who's looking out for your best interest, right? That's step number one. And Tom Kline, he's no lawyer, but you could have been, buddy. You could have been. The thing is, too, I want to touch out. But in order to answer that question, I really want to touch on innovation and creativity. Okay, I only work with other lawyers and accountants and other business people who are creative. Okay, you can really leverage the issue. Okay, you can really leverage consumer data privacy in order to give yourself an advantage over your competition. You can leverage consumer data privacy to create a really interesting and trust-inducing experience for your customers. Okay, so at the end of the day, you want to be able to understand these laws were written with balance in mind. They know you have to use these tools to make money. They understand you're in the business to make money, and that these industries are quite frankly become totally reliant on these tools in order to be able to do that. So follow the letter of the law. At the end of the day, follow the letter of the law and work with competent, creative professionals to kind of build a solution around your business that facilitates the maximum amount of ROI, right? That preserves your revenue.
All right. Anybody else want to add to that one, or do you want to go on? If anybody does, I'm going to pause there for a second. Tom or Zach, do you want to go on that at all?
Oh, go ahead, Zach.
So Boyd, if I'm hearing right, one of your suggestions within that, thinking about creativity, would be like jurisdiction-specific blocking. as opposed to a blanket approach to things?
Absolutely. Yeah. Listen, there's different laws for a reason right now anyway, right? ADPPA, which is the federal framework, that'll come along in time, right? And at that point, it'll have supremacy over all the different different state laws. But in the meantime, every state does have their own laws, and there are nuances that differentiate them. You need a solution, and quite frankly, what I would suggest is kind of set it and forget it, to where it's purely jurisdictionally responsive, and that it's always globally compliant, so that that whenever anybody from any jurisdiction comes to your website, that you're serving them up the banner with the language and options, right, that comport with those laws. You don't need any more than that. You need what the law says that you need. You could overcomplicate that, but the reality is that's it. Do not just the minimum, do what you are supposed to do for the right reasons.
So thinking about my passion point in this, do you see anything in the law that says block analytics scripts that are, not collecting private, personally identifiable information?
No. Yep. To clarify, these laws in the United States are what we call the default to opt-in. Okay. GDPR, which is the European regulation, is default to opt-out. Does that make sense? Okay. Yes. So are you tracking with me? So in Europe, a user has to provide you consent before you can run scripts, before you can load the cookies, before you can do all these other things. In the United States, and there's no exception to this, the United States, even in California where they're crazy strict, in the United States, every jurisdiction says you can run the stuff until they tell you you can't. Okay? So there's no exception to that. Now, if you want to be extra careful, to Tom's earlier point, right, your risk tolerance is extremely low. Okay, and you really want to prioritize this off chance that you're going to get sued for doing something that's not illegal, and you want to tank your revenue, that's up to you.
And let me just hop in here for a second, Brooke. There's other ways to look at this and other perspectives. So I would be remiss if we didn't talk about insurance as a part of this conversation, right? Because when a business guy or a business lady is making a decision about any particular item, you have to think about what peril you're concerned about. What is it you're concerned about being sued about? And once you can define what you're going to be sued over, then you go back to your insurance policies and say, how would my insurance policy respond if I were to get sued over this? Would it respond? Would it not respond? Do I have enough coverage? Is my deductible too high? Is it too low? Am I spending too much? Right? That's all part of the equation. So if we're not discussing insurance as a part of this, I think we really need to consider it, because, again, dealers are interested in selling cars. Okay, so if you want to sell a car, what is the right choice for you? And then knowing that things happen, and knowing that people file lawsuits, and knowing that you don't have to be right to file a lawsuit. Anybody can file one. It's not expensive.
There you go.
It happens every day. And so when that happens, not if it happens, but when that happens, how will your insurance company respond? Now, I have called a few insurance professionals on this question, and they don't have an answer. I have theories on this, and I have thoughts on this, but they really didn't know. And so you have to go back to the policy and read the policy for yourself, and read the exclusions, and decide for yourself if this is going to be covered or not. So, and I can go on and on, but that's really kind of the base of what I want to talk about.
Can I capitalize on that a little bit there, Brooke? Okay.
Yeah.
Number one, to Tom's point, right? My mom used to say to me when I first started driving, she said, you could be right and dead at the same time, right? Look left and right at a green light. And I became a lawyer. And probably the one thing that I learned over and above all else as an attorney is we don't really have a justice system. We have a legal system. And you may be surprised to know this, but lawyers tend to be opportunists. And they gravitate to place. Yeah, it's a strange thing. I know it's a bit of a mind blower. But they tend to gravitate towards positions of power. They're even drafting legislation for the benefit of themselves and other people just like them. And this is really that thing. If you're not familiar with something called rent seeking, you should check it out, right? And kind of connect the dots yourself. But the reality is that you can't entirely prevent a lawsuit. There's no way to really do that, right? The least you need in order to file a complaint is enough facts to state a claim to relief that is plausible on its face, right? It just has to pass muster. It just has to be possible that it could be true, and then it's going to be heard, okay? And you're going to have to spend some money, go into court, right, fighting it, getting it dismissed, these other kinds of things. There's no way to prevent that. But when it comes to insurance, or it comes to the law, you want to mitigate. And how do you mitigate? You mitigate by doing everything you know you must do. And you don't need to do anything more than that. Because that's the law, is what you must do. Okay? There's lots of things that could be true in some parallel universe, right? Surreptitious wiretapping is an example, right? It doesn't mean that those things have any basis in reality. Okay, so don't fear. Do not the bare minimum. I'm not going to say that. Do what the law requires and don't do anything more. And then work with competent, creative professionals to make sure that you have the perfect fit with regards to any solution.
Amen to that one. Yeah. And it really is knowing, partner with someone that really does know the law, I will say, because what may happen is that you partner with XYZ company and they are just way overboard, which, okay, I get it. And that's what they've chosen to do. And that's fine. Understand, as we've talked about now for we're going on 32 minutes of here's the ripple effect, the domino effect of what's going to happen if you go overboard. And I am not a lawyer. Obviously, Boyd, you are. And to hear it come from you that, hey, just do what you're supposed to do. Like, give that 100%. 100%'s good. All right, let's move on. So I thank you so much for saying that. Tom, I'm coming over to you on this one. How does the landscape of data privacy compliance affect the relationship between dealers and their customers?
Well, I think to follow on to what Boyd said earlier, there's a reason that these cookies exist, right? The retargeting ads are helpful for customers. I mean, it's not just us who likes them. The customers like them too, or people wouldn't pay for them. They're useful, and in the shopping process, they're like, oh yeah, I should go back and look at the Ford, whatever it is, right? And so I think it's good both for the marketer and for the consumer to be able to use some of these tools and be able to provide that information to the customers in a way that they want to consume it.
And to that, I mean, everywhere we go now, there are banners popping up left and right. Like, and this is, I'm going to say Phil, but I believe that Auto was a little bit later into it. Maybe I'm wrong on that one, and I wouldn't be the first time I'm wrong. It's not going to be the last one. I believe I was seeing them way before years ago on different websites. And I was like, cookie. And I will also say the terminology is really confusing for the I won't say normal person because I'm not normal, but the lay person where you're going through like reject all. Okay, I get that. Accept all. I get that. Then there's functional and necessary. You're like, well, which am I supposed to click? Like, I'm so confused on this. I mean, do you guys see that as well? Like, are you hearing feedback from either your clients or from other dealerships? That's just the verbiage is really confusing.
Yeah. Zach, did you want to weigh in on that, or did you want me to?
No, go for it, because we could go down a whole rabbit hole of the meaning of the differences between those things and the fact that the consumer, like I've had to read, articles and legalese that I didn't plan on ever getting into to wrap my head around this concept, and the layperson, either the dealers watching who are not a lawyer and have not spent, dozens of hours going down this rabbit hole. I said I wasn't going to answer this, but here I go. Or consumers who look at the banner and look at the things that it has for options and don't know the meaning, so they just click decline. The terminology issue is definitely a big part of it. But go ahead.
I just want to start off and say, it's a banner. It's the very first thing they're going to see if you have the solution in place, right? At the minimum, what it needs to say is, right, the language, right? It needs to comport with the law. It needs to provide with the options. It can say other things. It can say, you can trust us. It can say lots of other things. It's a banner. Banners used to be used, right, intelligently, and people aren't thinking outside of the box and say, how can I use this banner as the very first touch point in a relationship with a client to set the stage, to create this, perception in the mind of this probably tainted consumer with respect to auto dealerships. I'm just saying, you know what I mean? Here's an opportunity to say, listen, you can trust us. We care about you. They're not going to understand it. Educating them is not something that you have the opportunity to do, nor are you responsible for doing. But if at the very least what you've communicated is that you're caring, you're concerned, you're trustworthy, you've done a lot in terms of priming or conditioning that client to have a favorable experience and hopefully convert it to a client.
What I honestly didn't know that. I mean, it's just amazing that more and more we talk, how much I'm learning from this. I was under the impression that I had to say certain verbiage, but
it does.
Really
that's not all it needs to say.
Well, another thing is that all of the solutions that are available to auto dealers just have one default flavor, and so they're not being armed with the knowledge that there are options like we just were. Usually it's here's the banner, put the script on your site.
Well, Zach, that comes back to, you have to be working with, whether it's in compliance, right? Generally, somebody like Tom, or whether it's consumer data privacy or solutions provider or any other company. You as a business owner, you need to have a relationship with a company that's looking out for your best interest. Whose best interest is your best interest? Who's going to give you every option under the sun? They're going to let you make bad decisions if you want to, because that's your choice. Okay, but they're going to give you all of the education and the resources to make good decisions. And then they're going to work with you to think a little bit outside of the box. It's how can we leverage this thing in order to maximize the positive impacts, right? Minimize the negative impacts. If I characterize the relationship with you coming from the consumer data privacy world as, you better do this or else, right? Everything my entire relationship with you, the entire dynamic is based on that. If on the other hand, we come to you and you say, this kind of sucks, and everybody knows that it does, we appreciate that it sucks, that you don't want to talk about this, you don't want to deal with this. Listen, we'll deal with all the minutia on your behalf. We'll always be looking out for you. Let's have a conversation about how we can work together creatively to make sure we minimize the negative impacts and maximize the positive impacts.
Not hearing enough of that message.
No, I was just going to say mic drop moment right there. So it is so true. And even from the sense of I remember talking to a colleague of mine, and we were just talking, and she was saying, hey, I actually like having the cookies there. She goes, because I'm going to forget it's in my cart. I'm going to forget I put something there. So I want to get retargeted with ads that I know are going to be personalized to me. I'm just the opposite. I use a browser that blocks everything. I have to constantly re-sign into things, but I would rather do that because I like my privacy. Like, I will not use a browser that's going to track me. Like, I'm kind of OCD about that, but I'm still going to get some things because you can't completely get out of it. Actually, you might be able to. I think a lot of people in us know Andre Amico, and he's got a tool that you can actually say don't track, and you got to rename your phone, and it won't track you anymore. But for the most, you really can't do that, to my understanding.
Don't worry, your phone's listening to everything you're saying right now. So,
okay, you know what? The worst is when you actually have it pointed towards, probably pointed towards shoes, and all of a sudden I get an ad up for shoes. I was like, I didn't even say anything. Like, okay, fantastic. Yeah. So on that note, Zach, I'm coming over to you next. Is that if you're looking ahead, you got your crystal ball, you're looking ahead here. How might changes in data privacy laws and compliance requirements transform dealership business over the next next couple years? How do you think?
So I'm gonna assume for the moment that everyone makes a well-informed risk-benefit analysis and at least holds on to their analytics data. Otherwise, the whole much bigger can of worms. Inevitable impacts that dealers are going to need to consider. First of all, inability to retarget. So, like I said before, that's basically gone. I think this and my next point are going to come back to the same thing. You need to take everything you're hearing from vendors with a grain of salt when they're offering you technology solutions, because a lot of it cannot actually be delivered. So I still hear a lot of my dealers saying, retargeting this and retargeting that. I think to myself, you can't retarget more than like 30% of the people that are hitting your website at this point between all of the various ways that you're not going to have that data. Google's deprecating this in their ad program. We've got Chrome is going to be blocking it. Banners are on people's websites. Like, retargeting sailed off and away a long time ago at this point, and you do a little bit of it, but it's not accurate. At this point, retargeting is not follow the user around with the F-150 that they looked at. It's drop an ad on car and driver's display sidebar and cross your fingers that person's in market. The next piece of it is, like, I was talking to a dealer the other day, and he was asking me about my opinion on AI-based chat tools. Okay. So one of the things that he was saying was the one that he was looking at, the one that he was putting at the top of his shopping list, was pitching that when a user comes back, the tool remembers what cars they visited, what VDPs they visited, and it followed them around the rest of the web, and it understood what their shopping behavior is, and it's going to give a personalized AI-based chat experience to that consumer, potentially even hitting them proactively on the website. I'm scratching my head thinking, how? Because we don't have the cookie data to have possibly followed them around to deliver on that promise. Yet here the chat vendor is claiming that that is a primary feature, and here's a dealer who is making a buying decision on a promise that, yeah, their technology is baked to be able to do that, but the data to be able to fulfill the promise isn't going to be there. So dealers need to understand that you need to just assume that cookies are gone, that the ability to track people around the web and watch their behavior is gone. Even if you keep your Google Analytics data, know another thing. Google Analytics is no longer going to be able to differentiate that user from somebody who's been there before from a first-time user. So new user is a metric in Google Analytics, and user is a metric in Google Analytics, and we usually differentiate them. New users are someone who's been here for the first time in 30 days. User is just total count. Well, everyone's a new user when you can't know that they were here before. So we got to start recalibrating our minds to understand what cookie deprecation across the web is going to do, and just assume that, because we might as well aim for where we're going, not try and fight the nail against something that we really don't have the power to control at this point.
I think the name of my new punk band is going to be Cookie Deprivation.
You know how anytime I say that word, I have to stop. So I'm like, I'm going to say a word that is not going to be the right word. I can tell you right now.
I just want to share that at Wikimotive, we formed the cookie committee to make sure that we could, across multiple departments, keep apprised of this issue as it continues to develop. And different flavors of cookie are mandatory at each one of the cookie committee meetings.
Do you have milk and cookies, a little nap time? Is my question.
The beanbag nook is right outside the conference room, so it's well positioned.
I love it. Oh, I think you know. Go ahead, Boyd.
I just want to weigh in on something that Zach said. I mean, there's an exercise that I've gone through with so many businesses in the past, right? And you can react your way forward, which is never, ever going to work. Okay, and this is what most people are doing because the frequency of paradigm shifts in the past was slow. We had an opportunity to understand things, to make intelligent decisions, and then, of course, make decisions and try to stay in play. But the paradigm shifts are happening at such an incredible rate of speed now that the only right way to do it is to take a step back, reimagine your business in context, right, and have what we call a kind of points of intersection mindset. Is working with experts like Tom or Zach, right? Other experts who are looking out for your best interest, who are creative, right? Who will work with you to say, hey, look, here's where things are going. What kind of company, what kind of dealership are we going to be in 2 years, right? Not how can we continue doing business the way that we've been doing it, right, to the greatest extent possible in the face of all this adversity in 2 years. It's the wrong way of thinking about it. And there's an old adage, I'm sure it's not restricted to the South, but it's right. You don't, if a bear is chasing you, you don't have to be the fastest guy. You just have to be faster than the slowest guy, and that's a lot like what this is. So,
but I want to follow up here a little bit. This is that. Can compliance be used as a strategic advantage to build consumer trust and loyalty?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Again, to the point about the banners, this is just a simple example. But it's the first thing they're going to see. It's the first thing they're going to see, and you're asking them something, and you're giving them an opportunity to do something, and it can demonstrate trust. At a minimum, it needs to say what the law says that it needs to say. but you could say other stuff, right? You could have other images there. You could have other things there that are going to color that thing favorably, right? And then you can carry that message throughout every touch point of the experience, right? Which doesn't, of course, stop at the website. It extends to when they come through the door, right? If you're constantly reinforcing with the person or the patron that you can be trusted, that you care about them, right? And with respect to their privacy, or with respect to their, the car they walk away with, or whatever it is, you're going to have a customer, right? That's a more proud patron. And the reality is, people don't promote they don't promote your dealership. They're not going to promote your car. People promote themselves. They promote the relationships they're proud of having developed, and the decisions they're proud of making. And if you're a decision they're proud of making and a relationship they're proud of having, right, you're going to enjoy a lot of great referrals from friends and family, and they're going to be a repeat customer. Certainly, consumer data privacy can be leveraged in order to be one element of that kind of a strategy.
And you said something there about the coloring it, and I just my immediately thought was, I know where your statement was going, but the same breath is like, you can actually change the look, the feel. You want to change how the colors. Maybe you have a color scheme that obviously OEM compliant, but there's all these different things you can change, and that like I don't think a lot of people understand that or are talking about it, and therefore or making a decision on having this much of the information. So I think that's also I believe that's also very, very key to working with your partner to say, okay, this is what I'm thinking, this is what I want to do. I understand that this doesn't make any sense to me. How the hell is it going to make sense to the consumer that is coming in just wants to buy a vehicle? Like, they just want to buy a vehicle, and they got pop-ups going everywhere. So understand that just make sure you have a true partner that will work with you on that and understands the law to its fullest. And it is ever evolving, I feel like, lately. But
that's true.
Tom, I'm coming next to you, buddy. So what are some of the best practices for managing and protecting customer data under current regulations?
Number one, protect it. Number two, try to protect it. I mean, there's a lot of dealers who aren't doing anything in this area. They just want to stick their head in the sand, or they don't know. If they don't know, they should call somebody on this podcast and say, hey, what can I do to protect, consumer data? It's required. It's required under the Graham-Leach-Bliley safeguards rule, which the new regulations, the updated regulations, went into effect June 9th of 2023. So if you're not working on that, or you haven't worked on that, better get started because it's already past due. And the Federal Trade Commission, there was a press release 2 weeks ago, roughly, that said that they are now working with the state attorney generals, and they're trying to have more fluid communication between the state AGs and the FTC. And there have been more data breaches with dealerships. Jeff Weiler had a data breach. Berglund Auto Group in Roanoke, Virginia had a data breach. Coons had a data breach where it's rumored that they paid upwards of $7 million for that class action lawsuit. And so you've heard me say this before, Brooke. I'll say it again. Don't get a case of the yets. It hasn't happened to me yet, so it's not going to happen. Boyd likes that one. But I mean, work on protecting that. Part of protecting, again, is insurance. Do you have cyber insurance to take care of those breaches? Have you ever considered, and just to do some quick math, got my handy dandy calculator here, but so credit monitoring is about $100 per customer per year. If you have 250,000 names in your DMS and your CRM, and you do the math, 250,000 times 100 is $25 million. Now, I think Brooke just fainted.
If it wasn't the first time I'd heard you say this, then yes, I would. And the first time that we went over these numbers, I was blown away. I was like, holy shit. Like, I did not know it was that much until you brought it up. So continue.
Right. I mean, but and not every single person who's, let's assume all 250,000 are breached, not everybody's going to sign up for credit monitoring, right? To be fair, not all 250,000 are going to do it, but let's say half do it. That's $12.5 million. How much cyber insurance do you have? Most companies don't carry more than $5 million of cyber insurance. That means the dealer is self-insuring the rest of that. So there are so many considerations. The main thing I would just say is don't be a ready, fire, aim entrepreneur when it comes to this stuff. Really sit down and think about what your strategy is. Reach out to somebody on this Brady Bunch panel and ask questions. See where you are. See what kind of risk tolerance you have. You may not be concerned about this. My personal opinion is that for dealerships are a target, and they're a target because of to use the phrase, we're a target-rich environment, right? I mean, we have their names, their socials, their pay stubs, their proof of the roof, their cell phone bill. I mean, we have everything. So we're, in some cases, dealerships are easy targets because all they have to do is, get an email that says, click here to see what everybody at the company makes, right? That's a classic one. And people will click on it, and then all of a sudden you've got a breach, and you're off to the races.
Yeah, I believe that you were the first to say this. If not, I'm just going to give you credit for it because I know I'm pretty sure I wasn't. But I love when you said, this is going back probably a year ago, you do not want to call your third generation customer like, yeah, so your information's on the dark web. Sorry about that. Good luck.
That's right.
You do not want to do that.
Think about your third, and it was me. Think about your third generation customer, right? Their dad bought vehicles from you, and their grandfather bought vehicles from you, and now you have to call and give them the bad news, right? That's just not a phone call you ever want to make, because you just can't. To regain that trust will take years and years and years. That's tough.
It is. Zach, all right, coming to you, buddy. With advancing technology, we're going back to technology with you, is what innovative methods can dealers adopt to stay compliant while leveraging data for business growth?
Okay, so taking this from the direction of, start by not losing access to your data, right? My opinion is that we don't need to be blocking GA4. So what I'm getting at there is don't fall prey to fear mongering. Most solutions have an option to not take that extra step, that step above and beyond the law, as Boyd keeps on pointing out. Don't go with an analytics blocking solution. You're gonna need to do the other pieces. So have a compliance banner so that you're running faster away from the bear than the dealership that has nothing, right? So first, run faster, but don't then go, step on the bear trap that you didn't see by blocking GA4. So keep your data. Now, let's say you're part of a group and the CFO looks at the risks here, doesn't understand how to do the cost side of that balance, and says, we're going to go with the extremely, extremely low risk version that blocks GA4. Bless you, Tom. And you lose control of this, and your group says, we're blocking it, and that's that. We've lost usable Google Analytics data. First of all, understand that you need to take a couple of steps. Get your Google Ads, go to your paid search vendor, or if you're doing it yourself, go into Google Ads and switch to click optimization, because if you're doing conversion optimization and you lose all your conversion data, your ads are now running blind, essentially. So now if you don't have reliable analytics data, and we are experiencing this, we have live cases right now where we're having to measure around the analytics because you can't use the analytics. It's utterly useless. What I recommend is a couple of different things. So email marketing, most email marketing platforms can at least report on things like open rate and click rate. So you go to your email marketing platform and you look at what that did. Then if it's paid search, you go into Google Ads and you look at the metrics that are available in there. They will still report. Will the conversion data be accurate? No, not whatsoever. So you're going to have to just leave that aside, other than direct phone calls and things like that for call out extensions. The website conversions will be inaccurate. But use your Google Ads data if you don't have Google Analytics data. If your vendor doesn't give you Google Ads access, fire them and get someone who does. On the SEO side, first of all, know where to aim for. So, Boyd, you were talking about basically intercepting where a thing is going, and this can apply to so many different areas. In SEO land, you simply read Google's guidance on where are their algorithms going and aim all of your efforts towards that future point, which is really serving the consumer at the end of the day. That's how a search engine keeps their market share. So at Wikimotive, we just aim at practices that are going to intercept that later point, because you're always going to be rewarded by the algorithm changes when you're aiming at where they're going. Now, that's just a strategy piece. What about a measurement piece? In SEO, that can be the hardest area. And actually, two of my recommendations here, I recommend to people, even if you have your analytics data, but they become necessary if you don't. SEMrush or something similar for rank tracking, so that you know if your rankings are going up. That doesn't lean on cookies at all. It's Google. You can just scrape to find that out. So that's not cookie reliant. And then Google Search Console data tells you clicks and impressions, etc., for your website, and it tells you all of that information up to the click to your website, which means that blocking of Google Analytics scripts or cookies on your website has no impact on Google Search Console data, which means you can essentially still get an accurate measure of your total traffic and what queries, what keywords drove that traffic, what pages they landed on, etc. By using Google Search Console, you will just miss the conversions piece. And that's the piece you got to keep on coming back to. If you lose your analytics data, even a large fraction of it, even if it was only 30% of it, much less 64%, the average we've seen, you can't trust your conversion data anymore, and then Google Analytics becomes useless.
And speaking of SEO, like that's something, first off, I never know. I always call it SEMrush, but then I see things like SEMrush. I'm like, I don't know what you call it. All I know is I love the tool and it's phenomenal. So, but that, like you said, is you don't need the other stuff. They can still get an idea of what's going on, and it gives incredible data. So yes, please look into that. And like you and I know have talked quite a bit on the Search Console portion of it, and like how vital it is. But yet, so many people will not look it up. I mean, I see, I'm sure as you do, Zach, a lot of ad agencies that refuse to hook up Google Search Console. Well, that's not we do advertise it, so we're not going to hook it. I'm like, are you kidding me right now? Like, no, that is such vital information. And you won't see, you obviously lose other stuff, but if you can see that, at least you have an idea of what's going on and how your consumer is shopping, what they're typing in. So on top of all the compliance stuff, after the show, you're watching right now, so don't do it now. Go into your Google Analytics and see if it's even connected. Do you own your Search Console? That is another one. Like, well, we don't know who owns it. I'm like, oh my goodness, how do you not know this? But with that, gentlemen, we are at the point of the show where we are jumping into the lightning round with these incredible human beings here. So Zach, I've got you up to my left here. So I'm going to first start with you. You've been on the show a few times, so you know the drill at this point. I'm going to try to ask questions that you haven't had before, but we may do another one as well. So first and foremost, for those that are watching right now, they're going to be able to see your QR code right below here. You're going to be able to see that right. Well, it's below a couple different heads here, but it's below here. Scan that. For those that are listening on podcast land, how can they get in touch with you and how can they find you?
Straight to me, Zach@wikimotive.com. You can go to LinkedIn, look for Zach Billings, hit the connect button or the QR. And my shameless plug is on the SEO side of things. We do a free rank over distance map, which is custom curated for anyone who wants one. Recommend.
Love it. Love it. All right. I've got Tom next to me now. So Tom, I'm going to go to you next on the same question. How can people find you?
Call my cell, 757-434-7656, or go to tucktheoctopus.com, bettervantagepoint.com. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me on TikTok. I'm sure and my YouTube channel. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel under Better Vantage Point. I have 143 as of this morning, 143 videos for people to watch and learn about compliance and all kinds of topics.
So pretty much just type his name in and you're going to find him. That's what's going to happen. Okay. Boyd, over to you.
Absolutely. Yeah, you can always reach me by cell, 210-722-1120. You can email me. You can email me directly at boyd@merchantadventurers.io. Have relationships with a lot of experts in a lot of different domains. I'm always happy to point you in the right direction.
Fantastic. All right. So one question we always going to ask, and I know that Tom, you on the show, and Zach, you're going to get asked this again. Why is the first time I'm asking you, though? Name of the show is Facts, Not Feelings. So whether it's in your professional life or it's in your personal life, how are you distinguishing facts from feelings? So we'll start with Boyd and then work our way around.
Well, it turns out, right, that whatever feelings you have are only ever a window into the conditioning you've had up until this point in life. So it's only ever perception on information. That's what feelings are. And most of the time, they're not accurate. And if you're led around by your emotions, then you're having a real hard time. So facts, turns out, are really just useful information, just when it comes to the world of consumer data privacy. There's a lot of facts and there's a lot of feelings. And I promise you that the facts can be twisted one way or the other to make you happy or sad. It's really all about perspective. But if you're an out-of-the-box thinker and you're a truly creative entrepreneur, I promise you you could probably feel good about even that.
All right, Tom, over to you.
I think research is the answer. I think you have to make decisions for yourself, not take for what other people tell you for granted. Ask experts, find websites that are credible, that are independent in their thought, and rely on those when you out there in podcast land know when you're being pitched. Remember that, and the little guy on top of your head going, that sure sounds like a pitch to me. I'm sure that notion is correct. So know what's real, know when you're being pitched, and find out the information for yourself, and then make good decisions, and feel free to reach out to experts in the meantime. Fantastic.
Zach, bring us home.
Yeah, I feel like I had the disadvantage going first on the plug yourself thing, because Tom and Boyd had much better answers than me, and now all my answers have been taken. So I've been shafted on this one. But no, I totally agree. Do your research. Now, I find that often it's easy to say do your research, but then I found out that around this topic, I had to do dozens of hours of research to even understand like the basic lay of the land, and that's untenable for a lot of subjects. So I recommend find people who you feel in your gut you can trust, who are not just pitching you and it's only for their own benefit. Find some people that you can trust and reach out. Ask some questions. There are so many people who are willing to give you a little bit of time and provide some answers. If you contact Boyd, I'm sure he's going to give you some answers without needing to have a business relationship. The same with Tom, the same with Brooke. And I know that I do the same myself. Find some people who know what they're talking about and let them get you a big jump further down the line in your knowledge about whatever the subject matter might be. And then you can pick up your research from a place of relative understanding.
Okay, now this one hopefully is an easy one. We're going to round it out with, and I haven't asked this question since I think like season 2. And I don't think, Tom, I don't know if you're on at that point. Zach, I know you weren't. So I'm going to start with Tom, then we'll go Zach, so you're in the middle this time, and then now to Boyd. What's your dream car or your favorite car?
Oh, the Lincoln Continental suicide doors.
Ooh, okay, nice. Zach, what's yours?
All right, so I feel like I'll answer it the same way I answered the last time I was on, but I'll expand slightly. Ford Raptor, that's what I drive anyway, and because fast and it's practical, and Priuses move out of the way on the highway.
And I was thinking I hadn't asked this, but that you're right. You're the first person I asked this to since season 2, so you can get it again. All right, Boyd, what's your favorite car?
It's the BMW 3.0 CS, the Batmobile. That I don't know what it is about it. I just always had a thing for them.
I like it. I absolutely love it. All right, everyone. First off, all you on this right now, just thank you so much for being on the show. This is such a vital topic, and there is so much information out there, both good and bad, and I'm just so grateful that you all could come on the show and share your knowledge with everyone. And with that, everyone, you all know the drill at this point. Find a way to serve today. I do not care if it is opening a car door for someone, can be a kind smile. Just do something to better someone's life and bring a little bit joy into their life today. With that, everyone, we will see everybody next week.